really hard to dredge up a subject today. I don't know, let's see. Anything in the modern world hitting the scriptures we just heard? This is a tough one. I don't know. I think I'd like to title the sermon today, The Effect of Apocalyptic Literature Upon the Modern World. How does that grab you? Yeah, that's kind of rough, isn't it? Okay. How about this? If you enjoy Monty Python, something a little shorter. No one expects the Inquisition. Okay, so maybe not, if 5 of you are laughing. How about REM? Anybody my age? It's the end of the world as we know it, and I, thank you, Bonnie. 2 of us my age. And I feel fine. You know, it's been an interesting week. Now, you may not know that the Christian calendar is a different calendar than our annual calendar. You may not know that next Sunday is the final Sunday of the Christian year by ancient rhythm. The season of Advent starts 2 Sundays from now, a brand new year. You may not know that we read 90% or more of the Gospels in a 3-year cycle. I don't just wake up on Tuesday morning and go, oh, that reading's going to horrify them, let's use that one. That these are ancient schedule and cycle of readings. And so as we come to the end of the Christian year, we start to talk about the end times. The end of days is what the Jewish tradition calls it. There's a fancy Greek word that I just used for you. Some of you may know it's called the apocalypse or apocalyptic. The word means the end of everything. And it's used for people who believe they are living in a world that's literally falling apart around them. There's great crisis and great tumult. They don't know what's going to happen next. And they think everything they love is falling apart. And they act like it, and they think like it, and they write poems, songs, and reflections. The whole final book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, is the apocalypse. This guy on an island of Patmos saw all this amazing stuff, and it's all scary. Great signs and portents in heaven, and stars falling from the skies, and earthquakes and floods. I mean, Jim Cantori would love the book of Revelation. Weather Channel, 24 hours a day. The book of Daniel. And the readings that we have today. All apocalyptic. End of the world stuff. Now I want to tell you that for Christians, we have access to a deep reservoir. It is a rich tradition of what to do, how to be, I've preached on it repeatedly, how to act in days like this and in times like these. It's not what CNN will tell you. It's a little different. I would say it's a little better. Genetically, we are part of the body of Christ. We've been here before, repeatedly. The world has ended more than once during the Christian march and journey through history. And Christians just know better. And the readings today give us insight about what to do during weeks like this, during weeks like 2 weeks ago, during weeks like 3 weeks from now, during times like this. The first reading, I don't want to take you into the actual text. I want you to visually see it. Look at the cover of your bulletin with me for just a second. Would you? Everybody knows the noted American Pennsylvania Quaker artist, Edward Hicks. I'm sure everybody, we're Episcopalians, so someone here got a degree in art history. right? Yeah, everyone's been to the National Gallery. Everyone's seen Edward Hicks. I know I don't even have to say this. Edward Hicks, he must have been Episcopalian before he turned Quaker. He used to drink and paint at the same time, evidently, which may explain what I'm about to tell you. Edward Hicks caught this piece of scripture from Isaiah, and he painted it. It's called the Peaceable Kingdom. Do you see the lion and the lamb laying down together? All the predator animals stop eating each other in today's Isaiah reading. They don't have to. Everything is provided for them. Do you see the little infant in the picture? This is Isaiah's vision of the Messiah. 700 years before the birth of Jesus, Isaiah saw this vision of a world that's reset. And there's a child in the midst of it. It's a very moving, it's a very compelling image. Almost like we're going back to the Garden of where? The Garden of Eden, right? Before we had to start killing and eating things. Before wars started. It's called the Peaceable Kingdom. Edward Hicks, does anybody know, for extra art history points, how many times he painted this picture? Anyone? I majored in psychology, I'm just going to tell you. 100 times. He painted this same scene 100 times. And as he got older and matured and more perspective, he painted the scene differently. He moved the characters around. But always, this guy was fixated on the peaceable kingdom. Why? Why? It gave us a vision of a world that is better than the world that we're living in now. You see, Christians know the end of the story. That God resets heaven and earth, and there is nothing that can frustrate or obfuscate God's will. This will happen. God will set it right. No matter what challenges or obstacles lay before us. Edward Hicks lived in a world where a young country was figuring itself out, and he painted the scene over and over and over again. I love that. He saw something better. He saw a world that was renewed and transformed. Friends, lift your eyes to something better. God gives us a vision of a new creation. Christians know the end of the story. And there is no force on earth that will stop God's will from being unfolding and designed and implemented. I hate to tell you this, but if you worship a guy who was executed on a cross and came back to life, you're an optimist. Some of you revel in being pessimistic. You're proud of it, and you tell me all the time, yes, I can spell the word curmudgeon, but you're not that. None of you. By definition, to be Christian is to be an optimist and to lift our eyes to something higher and more transcendent. It's maybe not a bad week to tell you that. How many times would you paint in your lives this picture? To see everything set right. It's a beautiful image by Edward Hicks. What a great story. Can I tell you, as we move into Thessalonians, same deal, hundreds of years later, Paul helps found this church. Steve and I, years ago, visited Thessalonica. We sat and read these letters and prayed together in the church in Thessaloniki. They think the world's ending, same thing, all apocalyptic. And they're told that Jesus is coming back. Can you back read the reading? What did they stop doing? They stopped working. They stopped everything. And they said, this is easy street. We're just going to wait for God to figure it all out. Now I want to tell you, in America, this is kind of hard to preach because of a Protestant work ethic. If you didn't work hard, you wouldn't be sitting in this chair. So it's hard to preach this to you. I note with some amount of shame that most everybody that sells everything they have, when was the last time this happened? 3 years ago? Do you remember selling everything you have and going up on a mountaintop to wait for the end of the world and someone predicts that time? Everybody remember these stories? I know that this never happens in Maine or Connecticut. Only south, I say with shame, of the Mason-Dixon lines does this happen. So everybody in Texas sells everything they have. They go up to the mountaintop, which is 14 feet above sea level, and they wait for God to show up. Why south of the Mason-Dixon? I don't know. There is a modern equivalent to what Paul is describing, though. I envision it as this beautiful chair. When we went on mission trip, one of the reasons I want you to come on our next mission trip, when we go on mission, we went to Texas. It was a beautiful, life-changing experience. But we were hosted by a Texan seasonal member of our church who has a ranch, and he also hosted us in his home. In his home, there's a big screen TV that always plays football, magically. And there's a leather chair. It's by the American Leather Company, if you'd like to know. And in the chair, there are buttons. And if you push the right button, your legs float up from the bottom. Your head magically slides back, and you're transported into heaven. Now, we had lunch. Deacon Steve sat in the chair. I literally was talking to him. I turned around to get my lunch. I turned back, and Deacon Steve had been transported into heaven. He left us for a little while in the chair. He did come back. We brought him back. Later that afternoon, I got in the chair, I pushed the magic buttons, and I too was transported into a beautiful heavenly place. All the cares of the world disappeared. And boy, are people trying to do that today. It's not about not working, it's about dropping out. Here's current events bonus quiz. What 2 nationally sponsored websites crashed this week? Does anybody know? Either of the 2.
Canadian immigration.
The Canadian immigration nationally sponsored website crashed late Tuesday night. Really? What was the second one? Anybody know?
New Zealand.
New Zealand. That was Wednesday morning. The New Zealand immigration national website crashed. First of all, I don't know why people aren't going to Malta, but that's a different discussion. But my question is, really? This is our patriotic response? Really? Canada or New Zealand? That's like pushing the button in the chair and just lifting up into heaven and you don't ever come back. Paul said, in times like this, you lean in. You lean in. You don't step away. You don't turn off. You lean in. And you work for the things that you believe are valuable in this world. Christians always lean in. We don't drop out. Last Tuesday, I reported for work as an election judge to the Eagle County Election Center at 7:20 a.m. in the morning. Those of you that were in church last week, do you remember Teague Simonton called me and asked me to come serve as an election judge? Now, I thought I had it made. Election judge, the black robe and the white English wig, right, of a barrister. We'd be drinking tea, talking in a British accent as minions counted these ballots. I walked in at 7:20 in the morning. I had a 20-minute break. What time did I leave? Keep going. Keep going. 12:35 a.m. part of a massive machine of people in many rooms. 6 of us counted 7,500 ballots. It was one of the most sacred things I've ever done. If you want your faith restored in democracy, volunteer to be an election judge. And I learned more in that day than I've known about our country in a long time. I looked the head of the Democratic Party of Eagle County in the eye, and the Republican head in the eye, and every poll watcher, and boy, aren't they a barrel of fun. Every poll watcher that came, I looked them in the eye. I introduced myself to the people I was working with. Why? Because I wanted them to know that people of faith are engaged in the world in which we're living. And we can go step by step with people to lean in times like this. We need to be out and about and engaged and involved. I don't care what party you're part of, we're Christians, and we need to be in the game. That's what Paul's talking about. Finally, may I just pull out one sentence from Jesus' apocalyptic statements. By the way, Jesus was a tremendous prophet. He predicted that not one stone would be left upon another. And do you know, in 70 AD, 40 years after Jesus said those words, Titus's 10th legion broke through the wall of the Temple Mount in Jerusalem after a 2-year siege. They butchered every single man, woman, and child that they found who was remaining in the confines of the Temple Mount. Titus left his corps of engineers behind in Jerusalem for a decade to pull down every stone that they saw. Jesus was exactly right in this prediction. The only remaining part is called the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, which is why it's so holy in Judaism. It's the only part of the temple left that Titus didn't destroy. Jesus knew about this world. He knew what was going to happen. And he tells people, when you get into this moment, when even your family is falling apart, God can give you something that nobody else has. Did you hear it? Words and a wisdom that no one will be able to contradict. Friends, you are inheritors of a word and a wisdom that other people don't have. In times like this, we've been there before. It is not a time to lose ourselves. It's a great time to find ourselves. Jesus said, if you endure, you get something beautiful. You get your soul. Don't lose your soul in times like this. Don't let anybody take it away. Don't let CNN break your news. Breaking news. There's breaking news. Yeah, of course. We've got something better. We've got something deeper and richer